All right, time now for our PIX panel. I'm joined this week by PIX 11's Henry Rosoff and Julia Marsh, the New York editor at Politico. So good to see you both.
Good morning.
Let's talk about this, all right, and begin with the budget. So exciting. Mayor Adams asked most city agencies, though, to cut budgets by 4%, blaming the cost of the migrant crisis, right? So let's actually begin there. And Henry, first and foremost, what do you make of the mayor's blame game instead of really handling the financial problems?
Well, I think there's a few factors at play here. I do believe that he's serious about this. He's asking the NYPD and the Department of Education to come up with potential cuts in a second round of what's called a PEG program. And those were mostly untouched agencies when he did this the first time a few months back. So this is serious, but there's also politics at play here. The state budget is not finalized, and in that final budget will be how much New York City gets to help deal with the migrant and asylum crisis, and so this positioning really does matter.
Yeah, so, let me bring Julia into the conversation here, because we just also heard from the mayor about the rat czar. Now, we had him on the PIX Morning News last week, and he talked about these were not cuts, they're efficiencies, semantics. But some people are saying, you know what, you hired a rat czar for $155,000 while you're asking other city agencies to make cuts. What do you make of some of the rhetoric that you're hearing out and about?
Well, it's not only the rat czar. He's named a number of these czar-type figures to City Hall, essentially adding to government bureaucracy while claiming that he's trying to cut it. So I think there is a fair criticism here, even though he claims it'll be more efficient in the end.
All right, to be continued on that one. And then there's this. You kind of brought in and look a little wider at the state. Governor Hochul naming a new candidate to become New York Chief Judge after Hector LaSalle's rejection. Now, this was a big story. I don't know how many of you were actually following it, but Henry, kind of fill in the gap here and help us understand what about Rowan Wilson makes the governor confident this nomination will make it through.
Well, let's begin with the fact that Senate Democrats have already said they are confident that this nominee will get through, which immediately did not happen last time. She really could not afford to make what I think is generally and fairly considered a misstep with Justice LaSalle. So I think this is very straightforward. This was done in collaboration with Senate partners. She couldn't afford to make this mistake again, and she picked someone that she knew would get through. I really think it's as simple as that, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Democratic-led Senate and Assembly. She
Unforced
has to get this
error
one through.
last time, really.
Abortion bill access up in the air right now. We just heard Ayanna's reporting on this one, Julia. A federal appeals court ruling that mifepristone can remain available nationwide, right, but with significant restrictions. Now, the governor of New York State, Hochul, already announcing that she's stockpiling an alternative abortion medication. Is that enough, I guess, for the state to remain this safe harbor, as she often calls it, for those seeking abortion?
I mean, it's a 5-year supply that she's stockpiling at a cost of $100,000. And, the Democratic leaders in the state, it helps them politically. They're already in support of abortion. They're also signaling the voters that, we're going to do everything to protect your rights and, signal to other states that this is still a safe harbor.
And as any of these abortion rights advocates will tell you, medical abortion is far more often the common abortion choice than, the medical procedure, the surgery, really, that women making this difficult decision have to have, most often used for miscarriages. So this is a wide-ranging, well-used drug. I really think this will go all the way to the Supreme Court, and we really just don't know what will happen.
Right.
I don't think this is hysterics from the governor and a Democratic majority. The Supreme Court has shown, a tendency to kick this back to the states, and states are already banning this, not in our area, but in other areas. So overreaction, no. This is happening.
All right,
we could see the Biden administration rushing to the Supreme Court as early as today. So Henry's absolutely right.
Yeah. All right, to be continued for sure. Let's talk about this, because we've heard a lot of rhetoric and conversation around New York City being dead, right? And the New York Post is reporting that nearly a third of New Yorkers want to move out, saying that they are fed up with things like crime, housing costs, poor schools. So I guess, when you look at the totality of it, right, in the article, it said 10,000 people actually left the city and went to Florida. How big of an issue really is this for Mayor Eric Adams? Because at the same time, there are people moving in, right, Henry?
I mean, just look at the last census data. We went from a city of 8 million to a city of 8.8 million. And really, that is a number of factors, but the main one is immigrant growth in the community, which has kind of always been this classic old New York tale. I mean, the Post, especially the editorial board, really does like to play up this storyline. Generally speaking, so do Republicans. But, you know, the statistics say the city's growing, not shrinking.
Julia?
Yeah, I was going to say Mayor Adams this morning, he was on PIX, he was on some other TV stations, and he was making that argument that meanwhile we do have businesses moving in. He attended a ribbon cutting of a big translation service global company, you know, opening their new offices, and he continues to be this cheerleader for New York.
Yeah, I mean, that's his joke, right? I mean, he has to be cheerleader in chief. I think that, you know, while the fact of the data speaks for itself in terms of the numbers, I think there is still this big perception problem when it comes to things like crime on the streets, cleanliness overall, and the quality of life issues that face New Yorkers every single day. But that's a conversation for a different day. And that may go to the point, which brings me to my next topic, and that's the city kind of losing out on the bid to host the convention. Mayor Adams threw a lot of money behind this, saying, come over here, we need the money. So what does that do now that Chicago got it, Henry?
I think this was a fairly obvious result. I don't mean to be so dismissive of the city's effort, but New York is not a swing state. I understand that it's going to Chicago, and Illinois is not a swing state either, but it's just over from Milwaukee, not as far from Michigan. I guess we're a little closer to Pennsylvania. Chicago's very close to Wisconsin. I mean, I just think the chance of this ever ending up in New York, despite the union arguments, was very, very slim, because you can make the same union arguments for a place like Chicago.
Julia, last word?
Yeah, I mean, Adams had also argued that we have unrivaled, you know, hospitality here, the hotels, the restaurants, and he certainly put a lot of political capital into this. But as Henry said, you know, we are not a battleground state. There was a last, I think, ditch effort that the new mayor of Chicago, being more of a progressive, more of a defund person, less aligned with President Biden, may have helped New York, but it really was a long shot.
All right, gonna leave it there. Julia, Henry, thank you as always.